Before the headlines, before the gunfire and the courtrooms, before the Kimes name came to define trouble, there was a family trying to make a living in Oklahoma's oil fields in the rough, dusty early years of the 20th century. A father skirting the law, struggling to make ends meet. A mother with failing health watching her family ripped apart. And two sons with too much time and too little supervision. It was a family that was slowly losing its grip. For decades that followed, the Kimes name would echo throughout the American Southwest, a chilling whisper of crime, escape, and tragedy. At the heart of the story were the two oldest Kimes boys, George, the quiet follower destined for decades behind bars, and Matthew, the charismatic kid outlaw whose seductive, charming smile could disarm a jury or a prison official, even as he embodied the dangerous Kimes glamour of crime. Though they came from a modest, humble family, they would grow to become the phantom boy bandits whose smoking guns and daring bank robberies crimsoned a chapter in Sooner history. Their exploits, ranging from many brazen bank holdups across multiple states to several deadly shootouts with law enforcement, plunged not just themselves, but their entire family into a vortex of notoriety and heartbreak that would continue for nearly the next 50 years. Once the first trickles of crime exploded into a torrent, barely a single year would go by without some shocking, tragic, or unbelievable event involving at least one of the family members. From their beginnings in rural poverty to becoming one of the most pursued criminal enterprises of their time, the Kimes story is a raw, unvarnished look at loyalty, consequence, and the relentless pursuit of justice. It's about a name that became the stuff of headlines, whispered warnings, and outlaw ballads, and the devastating impact of lives lived beyond the walls of the law. Join us as we peel back the layers of a legend, exploring the desperate choices, the fleeting freedoms, and the enduring legacy of the Kimes family, a saga that gripped a nation, fueled headlines, and left an indelible mark on the landscape of American outlawry. Every bit of what you will hear is true, pulled from the contemporary newspaper accounts. And while it is a story that you have probably never heard before, it is also one full of so many unforeseen twists and turns that you will not likely forget it. This is Dust Toll. Episode 1, The Root of Trouble. To fully understand the Kimes family, we have to dig deeper into the place and time where they came of age. Our story begins in the first quarter of the 20th century in eastern Oklahoma, during a time of massive upheaval. Oklahoma was still young, having just achieved statehood in 1907. It was a place in tension and with many competing interests. Native American people and territories were being squeezed by white settlers, lured into the state by the ample land, and those same settlers were competing with business interests who were looking to take advantage of the oil boom. Oil money flowed, and so did liquor, illegally. And both of those things brought trouble with them. Towns were growing fast, along with their problems. Bootlegging, burglaries, and bank robberies. Holdenville, Beggs, Okemah. These were not just dots on a map. They were small towns that knew hard work and hard trouble. Their rapid growth, fueled by the oil boom and sprawling railroad networks, brought an influx of new settlers. All of this resulted in a dynamic mix of prosperity and an undeniable undercurrent of lawlessness. In this chaotic environment, law enforcement was spread thin and often struggled to contain the rising tide of crime. Public fear was palpable, and local newspapers, eager to capture the public's attention, were filled with sensationalized headlines of bold holdups and dramatic jailbreaks. Sheriffs, facing immense pressure, were frequently elected on the solemn promise to restore order to counties that felt increasingly under siege by young men who carried pistols and seemed to have nothing to lose. Prohibition, intended to curb vice, had inadvertently transformed many ordinary citizens into moonshiners, further blurring the lines between legal and illegal activities. Gangs emerged from the shadows, engaging in everything from stealing livestock and breaking into railroad depots to running whiskey across state lines. Behind every locked storefront there was a gnawing fear that it could be the next target. Amid that storm, boys with a bent toward mischief could find plenty of places to go wrong. That's where we find two names already popping up in sheriff's reports: George Kimes, Matt Kimes. The Kimes family was large and hard-working. The patriarch of this branch of the Kimes family was a man named Cornelius, also often referred to as Neely. After starting his family in Arkansas, he felt that farming might be better on the plains of Oklahoma, so he moved his family, including 3 young children, across the border sometime after 1910 and tried his hand at sharecropping near Muskogee. 2 more daughters would be born after the move to Oklahoma. However, Neely soon found that farming came woefully short of supporting a family of 5 children. Lured by the potential of the oil boom, he moved his family again, this time to the burgeoning oil fields near Beggs, and he began to work for oil companies hauling goods. Neely's wife was Lillian. Not much was recorded about her, but we do know that she valued family and faith, and she pined over her boys who were beginning to go astray. By the time George and Matt sank into their most serious trouble, she was suffering from cancer and her health was fading. In addition to those boys, George, the oldest, born about 1904, and Matt, less than 1 year younger than George, there were 3 daughters: Lovey, 2 years younger than Matt; Nellie, 6 years younger than Matt; and little sister Jackie, who was 5 years younger than Nellie. The oldest son, George Kimes, described at various points as burly and bullet-headed, would grow into a serious-looking man, often seen wearing spectacles later in life. The younger son, Matthew Kimes, was often noted for his striking appearance. Reporters and observers described him as handsome, according to movie star standards, with a seductive, charming smile and a dimple in his firm, jutting chin. His hair color was described variously as sandy, soft brown, curly blonde, or even red, but he was consistently noted for his well-groomed appearance. He had blue eyes and a well-shaped nose, though his mouth was sometimes described with his upper lip protruding slightly over the lower. He was known for his charisma and dapper presentation. Their sister, Nellie, the middle daughter, was frequently described as pretty and young, with accounts noting her stylish dress, even in jail. All of these family members would make headlines in the coming years, as they were entwined in the saga written by the oldest Kimes boys. Not much has been documented about the lives of the Kimes family before 1924, but we can piece together tidbits based on news items of the time and subsequent reporting. In their early years after moving to Oklahoma from Arkansas, George and Matt were called on to help their father in both farming and driving mule and horse teams. It was then, when they were barely teens, that they were first exposed to the lawlessness that surrounded the oil fields, and they began to look for easier ways to make money than manual labor. In towns where the law was thin and fortunes were made overnight, it wasn't easy to tell the difference between hard work and hustle. For boys like the Kimes brothers, survival and ambition often meant the same thing. It is said that they began to steal goods from neighbors and others in the area: saddles, tools, guns, selling them in the larger nearby towns such as Bristow and Okmulgee. As they grew, their personalities cemented. George, the elder brother, was quiet. He followed trouble more than he started it, but once in, he rarely got out. He'd spend most of his life behind bars. His appearance was often marked by a serious demeanor, a contrast to his younger brother. Matt was different. He was charismatic. Juries liked him. Reporters liked him. Even some lawmen admitted that he could talk his way out of almost anything. He had a talent for natural leadership, evolving from a village sheik to an effective organizer of a loyal gang. His seductive, charming smile was often highlighted as a key part of his appeal. Matt also cultivated a Robin Hood tradition, claiming to refuse to steal money that was uninsured or belonged to widows and orphans, creating false ideals to justify his crimes. But when he ran hard, and when he fought to win. Later, he'd be known as the one who smiled in courtrooms and slipped out of jails. But in 1924, Matt was still just a teenager, already arrested more than once, and already learning how to play to a crowd. The brothers accumulated a group of boys about their same age and formed the Kimes Gang. In Bristow, they became acquainted with brothers Clyde and Roy Brandon, who were described as being about the same caliber as the Kimes boys themselves. Ranging in age from 17 to 19, this nascent Kimes gang began their life of crime. They initially focused on stealing safes, but soon found that hauling large, heavy steel safes was too much work for the limited payoff. They eventually decided that daylight bank robberies, while more dangerous and attracting greater newspaper notoriety, offered significantly larger sums of money that were much easier to carry. It is believed that their first bank robbery was on March 1st, 1924, in Caw City, Oklahoma, targeting the First National Bank. This easy getaway with $1,500 forecast a prosperous future to the young outlaws, and a series of robberies was continued in eastern Oklahoma, always netting them a sizable sum of money. That May, George was arrested with another boy, Joe Fletcher, both about 19 years old, and charged with robbery with a deadly weapon. The incident occurred at a store of a Mrs. Graham, about 3.5 miles east of Bristow. From the news story that day, the boys, it is alleged, entered the store of a Mrs. Graham, about 3.5 miles east of Bristow, with masks, pointed a revolver at the woman, and took $50 from the cash register. After this, it is said, the boys helped themselves to a watch and merchandise valued at $75. Joe Hagan, deputy sheriff at Slick, was called and started in pursuit of Kimes. He chased him about 3/4 of a mile, firing several shots at the boy to stop him. He sent one bullet close to the boy's head when he wheeled and held up his hands. These boys have been arrested several times for various offenses, but have always escaped. One of their alleged stunts was to hold up a Negro boy some time ago. The boy was on horseback, and they took both his wattle blanket and his shoes. The boy positively identified Kimes as the one who took his shoes and blanket, but the boys were acquitted. It seems that they avoided punishment for this crime, too, because in July 1924, they were still running free. It is believed that they were among the group that robbed the First State Bank of Avery near Drumright, taking another $1,500. During their escape, they were trapped by a roadblock leading to a massive gunfire. In the ensuing shootout, Patrolman U.S. Lennox was shot and later died, and Chief of Police Jack Airy was wounded. Though they were never officially caught or charged with this murder, the tale of that incident would become too familiar over the next few years. After this close call, they decided to lay low for a while, but they couldn't resist temptation for long. In December 1924, George and Matt were arrested along with several others from their gang for the robbery of a general store in Nahn, Oklahoma, which yielded only $17.50 worth of merchandise. They were taken into custody in Holdenville alongside Merrill Blackie Lucanville, Bert Hester, and Joe Stanley. They showed flashes of their taste for wealth even then, as they were driving stolen cars, a Cadillac sedan and a sport model Hupmobile, and wearing some of the same expensive clothes that had been stolen from the non-store. In the stolen Cadillac, authorities found paraphernalia used for safe blowing and picking locks, including a sledgehammer, an axe, punches, chisels, winches, caps, and a fuse for setting off a safe. This suggested that they may have been planning another, larger bank robbery, possibly at Stewart, Oklahoma. Rewards were even offered for the return of the stolen cars. It is rather ironic that this break-in, despite its small take, marked a significant turning point. It got Matthew and George their first conviction and sentences. In April 1925, Matthew Kimes, then 19, and Joe Stanley, 20, both pleaded guilty to burglary and received 2-year sentences in the state penitentiary. George Kimes, 20, was tried separately by a jury and also received a 2-year sentence for burglary. Lukenbill, age 19, was sentenced to 3 years. So, on Monday, April 20th, 1925, Sheriff Sam Turner and his deputies transported Matthew Kimes, George Kimes, Blackie Lukenbill, and Joe Stanley, along with other prisoners, to the state penitentiary at McAllister to begin serving their sentences. A newspaper writer would later sarcastically say that the two boys earned a 2-year scholarship at, quote, one of Oklahoma's better schools, its reform school, end quote. After serving only about a year of their 2-year sentence for the non-Oklahoma store robbery, George and Matthew Kimes were released from the state penitentiary in McAllister in April 1926. This was the first time they had experienced being behind the walls, but it certainly would not be the last. It was reported that they were released for good behavior. Apparently, the prison time did not serve as much of a deterrent for the Kimes boys. Not long after their release, they quickly resumed and escalated their criminal activities. On June 30th, 1926, the Kimes boys, along with associates Clyde and Roy Brandon, allegedly robbed the Depew State Bank of more than $5,000. Amidst this rising tide of lawlessness, both Matthew and George Kimes took time to enter into a surprising chapter, marriage. On August 13, 1926, the brothers had a double wedding in Fayetteville, Arkansas. Matthew married Bertha Bozart, who was 16 years old at the time, and George married Flossie Johnston, who was 18. The young couples then went to Bristow, Oklahoma. It was a fleeting honeymoon. According to sources, the brothers told their new brides that they were going out to get money to furnish their homes. But their marital bliss was short-lived, as 2 weeks later, the brother bridegrooms were in jail accused of 3 Oklahoma bank robberies and a murder. Later, their wives would testify during trials that the brothers were in Bristow, Oklahoma, at the time of some of the bank robberies, attempting to provide an alibi. We will return later to the brothers' exploits. But in the meantime, the two Kimes boys weren't the only members of the family who were getting mixed up in legal troubles. Younger sisters Lovey, about 18 years old, and Nellie, only about 14 years old, were arrested and charged in May 1925 on charges of harboring criminals. It was alleged that they had furnished food for men who were fugitives from justice and concealed their whereabouts from officers of the law. Those fugitives from justice were the girls' brothers and their associates. Then, in September 1925, Cornelius was arrested on a prohibitory liquor charge, bootlegging. Remember that prohibition was still in effect. He was also arrested after the Depew bank robbery on suspicion that he was involved. Neely would avoid prison for both of these charges, but they would not be his last run-in with the law. These events would hang over Cornelius and foreshadow a much darker incident that would happen in the coming years. So, as 1925 rolled into early 1926, the family had seen multiple arrests, whispers of armed plans, and the kind of notoriety that follows a name like smoke. George and Matt had finished a 2-year sentence in the state penitentiary in McAllister, albeit after having served only 1 year. They had both married young brides. Their mother's health was fading. Their father was getting deeper into trouble, and their sisters were proving to be loyal supporters of their brothers, willing to break the law to protect their family. There were those who said the Kimes family had become cursed. Others said they were simply living out the futures carved by the place they were born. But whatever the reason, as the days counted down towards 1926, things were about to explode. Soon, the Kimes name would travel far beyond Oklahoma. There would be gunfights, courtroom stunts, daring escapes, public sympathy, and public fury. And then, a deadly encounter that changed everything. August 1926, Covington. A single gunshot would turn the Kimes boys from local bandits into national outlaws. Next time on Dust Toll. From dusty farm roads to crowded courtrooms, from whispered rumors to front-page headlines, the story of the Kimes family isn't just about crime. It's about identity, consequence, and the way a name can echo louder than a gunshot. It's about how charm can be a weapon, how loyalty can be twisted, how a family can be both the shield and the sword. And it's about the men and women on both sides of the law who would risk everything to stop them or join them. This is the story of the Kimes family, and this was just the beginning. Daring jailbreaks, a cross-country chase, a deadly lover spat, family vengeance, shady connections, artistic endeavors, fun in the state pen, and a sudden end that you won't see coming. Join us as we tell the tragic, shocking, twisted story of the Kimes family of Oklahoma.
I will sing a little song, but it ain't very long, about a lazy farmer wouldn't hoe his corn, and why it was I never could tell, for that young man was always well. That young man was always well. He planted his corn on June the last. In July it was up to his eye. In September there came a big frost, and all that young man's corn was lost. All that young man's corn was lost. He started to the field and he got that last. The grass and the weeds was up to his chin. The grass and the weeds had grown so high, it called that poor man for to sigh. Called that poor man for to sigh.
This has been Dust Toll, the story of the Kimes family. It is a true story meticulously drawn from the newspaper accounts of the era, offering a raw, unvarnished look at the lives of the Kimes family members. This series was written, narrated, and produced by Darren Racy. For more information, visit our website at dusttoll.com.